So now to put it back together, all you got to do is just tighten these nuts back up. And we're going to throw a battery and a set of jumper cables on it and try it out. Make sure that it's working properly. Alright, now to remove the Bendix assembly, you got to pull these. There's two nuts that are on this plate here. I already got this one out over here. And then there's a snap ring on this pin. Which just snapped. Isn't that nice? Just broke it. Then that pin, drive the pin out. Now, of course, it's rusted. Spray it with WD-40, then we're going to drive it out. And then this whole assembly just comes apart. Alright, got it loosened up now. Let's drive the pin out. And that's how that comes out. And we're just going to clean up the rust. And we're going to grease it up in here, grease up the shaft, grease everything up, put it back together. And we're going to get a new snap ring that goes on the other side of this pin. Clean the pin up as well. Alright, we got that cleaned up good enough. Now when this thing goes back together, the notch here goes back towards the solenoid. It doesn't go in this way, it goes in this way. And it'll just fit in that slot right there and the pin will go through it. We're just going to grease this up. Add a little grease. A little grease on the nose here. There is a bushing that goes in the nose of the starter. If that wears out, you can get a new one, punch it out, put a new one in. Right now this is fine. If it's worn, the front of the shaft will start to jump around a lot, and that's not a good thing. But in this case, this one is fine. Remember, the secret to anything on a boat is grease the hell out of it. Grease on the forks. Goes in just like that. That's it. And I am going to get a new snap ring for this side, or I might have one off another starter. That's it. That's it. And that's how it'll operate. Alright, next we're going to put the motor back together. Now it's important to make sure that this is clean and rust free. If you remember at the beginning, one of those long bolts I had that holds the motor together was missing. I think what may have happened with this thing was because that was missing, I had a little corrosion in here. I didn't get a good ground to the motor case, because this is grounded and that's transferred through to the case just on this, where this contacts the nose of the starter. So I'm thinking, because that bolt was loose, that may have been my whole problem. This just wasn't grounded, and that's why it wouldn't spin. But anyway, it's cleaned up nice now. Got all the rust out of here, got other rust out of here. I cleaned up the bolts. The bolts will go back together, and hopefully we won't have any more corrosion problems. And when you put these in, you just got to kind of spread the brushes, get them on the commutator. There is a little locating pin, I believe. Yep, right there. That lines up. Put that hole and it drops in. Give it a little tap and hammer it in. Brushes it in. Okay. The same with the cover. I did spray paint it ahead of time, but I went back with the wire wheel and I cleaned all that off, just so it makes good contact. Bushing. A little grease in back bushing there. Grease on the bolts. And then they just go through the motor and they go into the hole, threaded hole over here. Then we'll put a set of jumper cables on it and see if the motor spins after I get this all tightened up. Alright, so I put a set of jumper cables on here. I grounded it. I touched it to here. The motor spun. I put a screwdriver in like this, grounded this, touched the start terminal. The screwdriver pulled in, so at least I know the magnetic part of the solenoid is working. I'm not going to know until the contacts are working until I actually put it in and try the starter the conventional way. So right now I just got to put it back together. So the spring, Bendix spring goes on here. This gasket, which is what was hanging it up last time, goes on. Pushes in, and then it just turns to lock. This tab turns, and it goes underneath here. I'm going to shut this off because I'm going to probably have to mess with it a little bit to get it in there with two hands. So, but that's the idea. You put it in, you turn it until this tab goes in that slot. Got it in there. Just put the gasket on, pushed it against the spring, and turned it. It wasn't terribly difficult. You just need two hands to do it. That's the power for the starter. Mounting bolts. The solenoid. And that's it. This thing should be working. I'm going to paint it all up first, and then I'm going to stick it back on the boat, and we'll try it out. Alright, so here's the test run of the starter. Let's see how this goes. That's good. Nope, I'm on the wrong terminal. That's it. That'll work just fine. I saved myself probably around, $200 I think this starter is for this boat. Just took it apart, cleaned it up, and that's all it needed.